Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So my understanding is that with the enactment of this legislation, even though we will be in violation of the UN drug control conventions, you don't think there's going to be any measures that can be taken against us? The other question I have is, yesterday one of the witnesses suggested that maybe what we should do is pass the law, but let it pass the bill, but let the law come into effect at a later date while we've ironed out, some of the issues and problems. Do you agree with that statement?
You take the first one.
To both of them, because since they both spoke about.
Okay. Thanks for your question. Yeah, on the first one, about the possibility of sanctions. The UN control system, there is the International Narcotics Control Board that is mandated to monitor compliance with the treaties. That does include, in extreme cases, sanction mechanisms, but those have never been applied, and that would basically also conflict with the other objectives of the treaty system, namely to provide sufficient availability of the controlled substances for medical purposes, because the sanction mechanism, in theory, could limit the possibility of export-import licenses for controlled substances to a country that is in gross violation. That is, I can assure you that is not going to happen. It also did not happen in the case of Uruguay, and in fact, and also on the basis of various discussions with board members, with members of the INCB. The INCB is also starting to reconsider its own role in this process. They are aware that this is a trend that is not going to stop, that is going to move forward, and that to protect the treaty system, it requires a way to facilitate this trend without the treaty system overall breaking apart over it. So they are considering also the possibility, instead of what they've done thus far, to just condemn countries who are in breach of certain obligations, to take up a role also to facilitate and discuss how such treaty tensions can be resolved. It is in that sense, I think relevant that next month, for the first time in INCB history, they have convened also an open session with representatives of civil society experts, specifically to discuss issues around cannabis regulation. I think that is a very positive sign.
Thank you. Chair, with your indulgence, can I ask the witness a question while I have him here? It might not necessarily be...
Can I put you on the
yes.
Second round for that? Okay. Mr. Walsh, do you have anything to add?
I would only add, with respect to the sanction question, that historically the question of pressure and sanction has come from powerful states such as the United States that have prevented, through threat or the likelihood of threat, countries from diverging from what the treaties require. So other countries in the past, for instance the Netherlands, that have tiptoed to the edge of the treaty boundaries with respect to cannabis, have pulled back for fear of what the United States in particular would say. And I think it's really, really crucial in that sense to understand that the United States is no longer in that position of the 800-pound gorilla threatening countries that are moving astray on cannabis on the conventions, precisely because the states in the United States have already put the U.S. federal government, from the perspective of the INCB, clearly out of compliance with the drug treaties with respect to allowing regulated cannabis. So the United States is no longer in the position, if it wanted to be, to pressure other countries not to do what the United States is doing already in its own way. I also, in response to the question about whether Canada might want to enact the law but stage implementation at a later date, I don't see that from the treaty perspective that there would be a need to do that.